Hello, everyone. Have people joining. We'll wait just a few minutes. Hey. I know it's right at the end of school time. You guys are trying to get through all the end of year activities and festivities and all that good stuff. So we'll go ahead and just be careful with your time. So we'll go ahead and get started, and the session will be recorded if anyone wants to go back and watch that later that wasn't able to join us right away. We do have quite a bit to go over today, so I want to just go ahead and get started with that. Let me share my screen. Sorry, get my screen, right one. Here we go. So we're going to go over these things. The first thing we have to talk about is this statewide screener. And I'm just going to start with an apology. I know you guys needed to know, and I was really hoping we could let you know before school let out what our statewide screener was going to be for next year, but we just do not know yet. We are still in the process of getting one adopted. We have done all of our reviews of them, and now we are waiting on OMES for the next steps. We've made sure that they're aware of the timeline and how important that is for districts to get this information. I am under a non-disclosure agreement, so we cannot tell you which ones are in the finals. And but I can tell you as soon as we know which one will be our statewide screener, which will be provided at no cost to you, I will get that information out. I will send out a newsletter announcement letting you know which one it is. We just don't have, we were hoping to let you know, but we do not know yet, so we can't give out any more information on that. The next thing is just wanting to know what these RSA meetings look like for next school year. I had a few people ask if we could host it at a different time that would be more convenient. So I made a little survey that you could fill out, and the link is right here in the agenda. If you want to go on and take it, it gives you a few different time options. I sent it out in the newsletter at the beginning of May, and I've already had around 80 something people to fill it out and turn it in. And right now the majority is voting to leave it at 1 o'clock, that worked the best for them. So if you would like to put in your input into what time you think would work best for you next school year, there's a link to the survey right here, and so that you could let me know what time would work best for you. The next thing I have is legislative updates. As some of you know, we've talked about before, Senate Bill 1906 was going to change a lot of things about RSA. So Senate Bill 1906 did die in committee, but it was brought back a little bit later as Senate Bill 362. It is linked right here in the agenda if you would like to click this link so that you could read the full text for yourself. It does have a few changes when it came back as Senate Bill 362 that were not there or were a little bit different in 1906. So if you would like to read what the current one that's up for adoption is, it's right here. If it does pass, this session ends at the end of this month, so we will know by the end of the month. It is back into the Senate now and will have to be voted on in the Senate. If it does pass, it will change quite a few things for us, and if it does pass, we will get right to work getting guidance out to you as soon as possible as what those changes will look like for you in your district. The end of the year report is open right now. It is in your single sign-on, and it must be certified and is due May 31st. We have a couple ways right here that you can look if you're not familiar with the report or just need a little refresher. This link is to a slide deck that you can look at that just walks you right through the process of filling out your report. This other one, when you open the report, there is a link at the top of the report to a video that Melissa made last spring that tells you about step by step what you need to do on filling out the report. Also, I put a link to it right here. It's also on our RSA website. So you can find that video either on the report itself, on our RSA coordinators page, and it's linked right here in our agenda. Next thing is the state testing results. RSA criteria are due back May 16th. So that's just in a couple days. On May 16th, you should be able to see the early RSA criteria results if your tests were in by that deadline. And so that could give you some guidance on decisions for your third graders. Speaking of, that is what we've been having the most calls and emails and questions about is guidance for promotion, retention, and what all documentation goes along with that. So I want to go over that again today. And we'll just start right at the top. Guidance for promotion and retention. If a third grade student does not participate in the OSTP, or if they don't pass the RSA criteria, then you have to use a different pathway to promote them to fourth grade. I've linked right here our flow chart that helps you to just guide you right through on the decisions. So there's the flow chart, and then we also have a link for the form that you have to use for documenting these decisions, and that needs to be put in the student's cumulative file. So I want to go through each one because we've had a lot of questions on pathways, and if they're passed on pathways, what that means for them in the future, what documentation is needed. So I just want to go through each one of those. Pathway number 1, the most commonly used, is they pass the RSA criteria on the state test. If they pass the state test, the RSA criteria on the state test, you just need to make sure that you have documentation of their test scores in their cumulative file, in their student's permanent file. And you don't need any other documentation. You don't have to do a pathway form. You don't need anything else. If they pass that, that's the only documentation you need is their test scores in their file, and they are ready to be promoted to fourth grade. If they don't pass the RSA criteria, but they have passed the screener, that's pathway number 2. So we have right here the cut scores for all of our state-approved screeners, and is at the 40th percentile. These are our scores. It can be met at any time. If they met it in first grade or second grade or any time during third grade, it does not have to be the very last test that you give them. It can be any of those times. If they have met it, they are eligible for promotion on pathway 2. If you're using pathway 2 to promote a student, you need to make sure that you have a copy of these scores in their cumulative file, and you also need didn't write that one on there, but you also need the pathway the documentation for pathways that goes in there that shows that they're passing by pathway number 2. If they pass on this, you do not have to continue their IPRI in fourth grade. They demonstrated proficiency on this. They do not have to have continued interventions or IPRI in fourth grade. Pathway number 3 is good cause exemptions. These are our good cause exemptions right here. Good cause exemption 1 is our English language learners. Then you would need proof of that, and that would be your documentation. If they've had less than 2 years of instruction in English. Pathway 2 is students with disabilities that have an IEP that says that they do the alternative assessment program, and you would have to put some documentation in their file stating that they are on IEP and that they take an alternative test. 3 is the performance on an alternative standardized test. So this is not the screener. This is one of our alternative tests, and there's a link right here that you can click that will give you our approved standardized test and what they have to make on them. And you would need to put the name of the assessment, the test, the date that they took it, and their score. Number 4 is a portfolio. So if they don't pass one of pathway 1 or 2, and you want to use this as their good cause exemption, you would need to complete a portfolio that shows that they are demonstrating mastery on a third grade level on these standards. And this is the portfolio checklist that is linked right here. So you could click that. That gives you what you have to have. And this portfolio checklist would be what you could put in their file for documentation. Number 5 is students who are on IEP and they have received 2 or more years of interventions, and that they are making adequate progress on their IEP goals. and you need to put proof of documentation of that in their folder. Number 6 is if they've previously been retained. They've already received intervention for 2 years. They've previously been retained in K through 3 for academic reasons. And you would just need to document what grade they were retained in and put that in their folder. Number 4 is an emergency circumstance. And in that case, you would need a copy of approval from the state assessment office. Students who are promoted by any of these good causes will need ongoing interventions when they go on to 4th grade, and you would need to document those interventions with an IPRI. So we're saying they're going to go on to 4th grade. We think it's the best placement for them, but we're going to continue to provide interventions for them, and we would need to document those interventions. So you would normally do this on an IPRI. You are going to continue to do that with these. We do have an exception for that, and that is the students who go on to 4th grade and then are on an IEP or were on IEP. You still need to provide interventions for them, and you still need to document those interventions. But when they get to 4th and 5th grade, you are allowed to just document those interventions on their IEP and not have to continue an IPRI on those students. So the good cause exemption students, with the exception of the IEPs, still need an IPRI. But if they're on an IEP, and then in 4th and 5th grade, you can use the IEP to document the interventions. Pathway number 4 is the team. The student reading proficiency team. If you are going to use this pathway to promote a student, you need to have the meeting. You need to have this form filled out. I don't think I'll link that one, but the SRPT form saying that everyone was in agreement that putting them in 4th grade was the best placement for the child. That child, when they go on to 4th grade, they are going to need continued interventions, and you're going to need to document them on an IPRI. So this link is for the IPRI beyond 3rd grade, and this would be what you would need to fill out for those students. Then at the end of that grade, you would need to have another meeting to decide if it's still in their best interest to promote them on, and this is the documentation you would need to do for that. So at the end of 4th and 5th grade, you would meet again. You would fill out this form, and all of these forms would need to be placed in the student's file. So we have some kind of situations that kind of complicate this, and this is why I talked a little bit about this already. But if the student, here's a sample question we've had asked recently. If the student was passed on to 4th grade on probationary promotion and have since been placed on an IEP. So they were not passed on because they were on an IEP. We used this team right here to pass them, and then in 4th grade, they were put on an IEP, and they're saying, well, now do they still need an IPRI? And do we still need to continue to do we still need to continue the probationary promotion paperwork in 4th and 5th grade for that student? So here's the answers to that. No, you don't have to continue the IPRI because you can use their IEP to track their progress and the interventions that they're receiving. But then the second part of that question is, yes, if they were promoted from 3rd grade on probationary status, then they still should be considered for grade placement again the following years. You don't necessarily have to hold a separate meeting for them. If you're already going to have an IEP meeting, you can address all of these things in that same meeting, but you still do need to look at their data, their progress, and see if you think promoting them is still the best choice for that child. And this is the documentation right here that you would need to fill out for that student. Again, for the next year is the review of probationary promotion form, and that would need to be filled out again. So IEP student makes it complicated. If they get on IEP in 4th or 5th grade, you can discontinue their IPRI because you can document the interventions on their IEP, but you still do need to have this the meeting, the SRPT meeting to determine promotion from 4th and 5th and fill out this form and place that in their cumulative file. And thank you, Melissa. I see that she went back and linked the SRPT document right here that they would have had. So I'm going to just pause right there because that was a whole lot. Does anybody have any questions about all of these pathways, promotions, the documentations, or anything needed for that?
I think, Deanne, most of those we've been able to answer in the chat.
Okay. Okay.
So I think probably the biggest is, and this is a question that comes up every year, is how long do students have to be on an IEP to qualify for good cause exemption 5.
They have to be on IP before state testing begins. So as long as your student is placed on the IP before that 3rd grade state testing begins, then they would be able to qualify for that good cause exemption. And I know in the good cause exemption, it does say that they are making adequate progress toward their IEP goals. And so if they were just put on IP right before state testing begins, you might think, well, you know, we don't know if they've made adequate progress, but you need to look at the whole last year, because you were already making, you know, before they were placed on the IP, you're already making modifications, you're already doing interventions for that student. So you can think, how were they progressing using the interventions and the modifications that we were already making for them? How were they responding to those? And if you think they were having a positive, good response with those interventions and those modifications, then you can count that as making adequate progress. So you could still go ahead and use that. Anything else in that area? Or
I think just for maybe our friends that don't have access to the chat, let's see, if a student is not yet on an IEP, but might be placed on one later, how would we promote them? Would we use pathway 4, which is probationary promotion?
So you would be right in this situation that I just described with these questions. You would have to promote them with the committee. And then once they're in 4th grade, if they're on an IEP, you could discontinue having the IPRI, but you would still have to do the ongoing documentation form to promote them out of 4th and into 5th. So it would be exactly the situation that was explained with this question right here.
And then some questions about the portfolio. Who has to be on a portfolio? Do we have to start one for our 3rd graders?
You are supposed to start one for your 3rd graders if they are not on grade level. So students who start 3rd grade and are not meeting the 40th percentile on the screener, you should start collecting that documentation for their portfolio. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to always complete it, because if they're a student who is not performing on grade level, you may not have documentation showing that they are showing mastery on those standards on grade level. Because if you are modifying their work, like say you're starting to progress, you're starting to try to qualify them for an IEP and you're already making modifications, if you're modifying their work where it is not meeting the 3rd grade standards, then those samples wouldn't work for a portfolio. But you should start one and start collecting that data just to hopefully give them another pathway. Melissa, do you have anything to add about portfolio?
No, I think we're both on the same page. We just said the law does require that we have it started. It does not require that it's has all of the documents in it, because we might find that a child's not able to perform at 3rd grade level independently. But it is okay to even put things in there with notes of student could not complete independently, or student required modification that took it off grade level to be able to be successful. That's still documentation. It's just not going to be documentation that would say they're ready for promotion.
And I just want to you kind of mentioned this, Melissa, but it does need to be independent work. So you can't put something in there that was done group or partners or anything like that. This has to be showing that that student can perform on that level independently.
Yeah. So Melissa, not me, obviously, but you know, the Melissa asking the questions, is that helping to address your concerns? Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Let's see here. Does the student reading proficiency team meeting have to be in person, or can it be via phone or email?
I think Melissa, I know the intention is for it to be in person. We made some concessions for that during COVID. Melissa, can you kind of address if
yeah, there's nothing in legislation that says it has to be in person. I do agree. It's definitely, especially if we're looking at trying to share data with a parent, with a family member, usually does come across better in person. It also helps them to feel more part of that decision-making team, not something that they're being told this is something that's going to happen to them. But sometimes we simply cannot get our families in the door. We need to have that through phone. I really would strongly discourage email, because that's not a part of that, that collaborative that is the intent of that section of the law. But phone or a video conference can make sense. There's nothing in the legislation that says that it has to be in person. But just as remembering how, if you were in that parent's place, would you want to be able to receive that news? So. And then let's see, I do see Mrs. Hutchison is saying having an issue with trying to print the EOY report. I'm going to recommend that you contact us through an email so that we can see exactly what the issue is. That's those technical questions are really difficult to answer on these calls. So I'm going to put Deanne's email address as a start, but obviously we're all right here together and we'll be happy to collaborate to figure out what the issue is and how we can help.
Give a few seconds for you to look at more questions, but I'm going to go ahead and go down to some professional development opportunities that we have coming up this summer that may be of interest to you. The first one is our evidence-based literacy instruction communities of practice that's going to be taking place this summer. We've had a lot of teachers do that during the last school year, and they've just opened up a new section for it this summer. If you complete it, you will get a $600 stipend. The class takes place all in July, and the deadline to apply for this is June 21st or until seats are filled. So we have a limited amount of seats, and they've put it out some other places, and it's been filling up pretty quickly. So if you're interested, you might apply, better sooner than later. But if you can click, this is a link, you can click this picture right here, and I have it linked to the form where you can read more information and apply, and it would take place all in that 1 month, and you do receive a $600 stipend for completing it. Melissa, do you want to give any more information since you're more involved with that, about that?
So with this is on our free platform, OSD Connect. It has about 14 hours of on-demand course that you would do at your own pace. And then throughout those times, we would have a 1-hour facilitated session, all virtual, led by our Heroes instructional team. So they have put that together for our literacy communities of practice as a way to help teachers take the information behind that science of reading research and apply it to their classrooms. We have had educators participate who have gone through letters and said this really helped to enhance what they had already learned through letters and to help them see how this actually worked in application. We've also had educators go through our literacy communities of practice that had never been through letters or anything similar and said this was a great starting point. So we were trying to kind of meet that that line of what could be helpful for all of our educators, regardless of where they are coming in on this knowledge and research, to be able to say, how do I help be a better, stronger educator at reaching my students with this reading? There will not necessarily be, there's information that we have sending out, but we're not sending out confirmation emails as far as signing up, simply because we don't have the capacity to reach out to every individual. If you are signed up, you are able to join. And if for some reason we do have to move to a wait list, we will make sure that people are aware right away that they're not. We will be sending out that information as far as like when your time is, as soon as we are able. Right now, out of the 450 seats we have available, we have 263 people at the last time that I saw already signed up for that. So seats are filling up quickly. We've only had registration open for 3 business days. So that's a great thing. We're very excited to see that we have educators that are wanting to learn over the summer. I know most of us really do have that passion for learning and wanting to really help our kids. And this is something that is a little more palatable when you have 14 hours of time and 5 sessions. So, and I know we had a great response from the people who have just finished up. So we will be sending out that information as soon as we can, Sammy. I know we won't be sending out a confirmation. Assume if you've signed up that you're there. And then we will be sending out those specific times and groups for each person as soon as we're able to. Do we have a timeline for knowing what the state will choose for the screener? Must have come on just after. We are still working on that review. It is out of our hands and in with OMES. The timeline that we had set has long since passed. If we had our way, you'd already have that information. So we are working with OMES to try to get those that last stage scheduled so that we can get that out. Unfortunately, we're still currently under a non-disclosure agreement. So beyond that, we really can't share much else for that. So we know that everyone is chomping at the bit. We appreciate your patience. Please know that we're as frustrated as you are because we would like to be able to move forward as well. So, Deanne, on the end of year report for the completed program on level column. So students that have completed the program and are on level, do we have to use their last benchmark test score, or if they have met benchmark at any point in the year, do we count them as completing and on level? Deanne, are you still there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yep,
Yes,
I can
okay.
now.
So, in those circumstances, I would say if that you need to look at the data, because if they were on level, if they met the like the end of the year cut score in February or March, and then you give it again in May and they scored lower, then you need to think is which one is the most reliable score for that child, and how did they do in their intervention? Do you feel like they completed your intervention program on level, or do you feel like they did not? That would be my advice. Melissa, do you want to add anything to
I
that?
would completely agree. It's really hard to determine if a student's where they need to be based off of the one score. Remember, this one score gives us an idea of risk. But as far as are they really where they need to be, you do have to look at the larger picture to say, where is this? This is a piece of that. If they're well below, that's certainly a concern. If they're right there on that line, what else? What other information, because we know our schools have so much data on our students, what other information lets us know that they are reading on level? But you're right, we do see so often that students who've been making great progress and climbing away, and then in May, they've got that summer coming in, or they've got fatigue from their state testing, and it suddenly inexplicably drops. So in that case, no, you don't have to use that final score if the rest of the data is not matching up to that. If you haven't tested that child though, since January, you haven't been doing any progress monitoring, it's not just a matter of ignoring that score. You do have to consider what is the other information that we have from monitoring their progress and everything else that's been going on with that kiddo.
A few other things we have going on this summer. We have Inspire Oklahoma that we will be hosting in July. It's on July 15th, and it will be in Tulsa at the Cox Business Convention Center. I will be there. I will be presenting on what RSA is going to look like for next year. So sure, by then we will know if we are still under Reading Sufficiency Act or if we are under the new Strong Readers Act. And I will have guidance for you at that. Melissa is also presenting at that. Melissa, can you speak to what you will be presenting at that conference?
So I'll have 2 different sessions, one of just helping to define science of reading. This is a term that we hear often, and it is often misused as we're thinking I'm just adding more phonics, or it's only for our lowest grades. So helping to understand that 5 decades of research behind that term and what does that tell us. The other one is looking more at just that application, do this, not that, for our early literacy classrooms. So what are some practices that we need to make sure that we have, and what are some practices we probably should be eliminating from our toolbox? So as we're looking at that, and what does the research tell us? What does a lot of the evidence show that might be helpful? I'm going
There's
to
a link you can
Yeah, go
can
ahead.
click on that, and that has a link to register to attend the Inspire. And then the last one I have on here is the Reading League. The Reading League is hosting their symposium this summer, and it is June 14th, and it is here in Oklahoma City. And this is a link to this where you can register for the Reading League symposium.
And I see Classy on the call, and Classy is actually the driving force behind that symposium. Classy, would you like to unmute and talk a little bit about what might be offered at that? I caught you off guard.
Yes, you did, because I'm looking for my unmute button. I've got so many things going on here. I had a list, not with me now. We will have Danielle Thompson as our keynote speaker. And then in the morning, we will have 6 different breakout sessions, varying from early oral language all the way up to middle school and high school literacy. And then after, we will be providing lunch. After lunch, we will have 6 more dynamic breakout sessions. And then we will have a panel of literacy experts where we're going to present some questions to them, and maybe even take a few questions from the audience. We look forward to having a great day.
Things that you have this summer that you could look forward to gaining some knowledge in the summer, and these 2 are only a 1-day thing, would not be a large time commitment. This one is a little bit larger time commitment, but you get a $600 stipend for completing it. So those are some great things that you can look at doing this summer. I don't have anything else. As always, I know like right now we do have lots of questions coming through with you guys trying to do your end of the year reports and promotion retention decisions and all of those things. So you can always email me. My email is at the link to the top of the agenda right here. There's my email. There's Melissa's email. We also have this email right here that is just it's just an RSA email that comes to where anyone in our office can answer them. I usually try to check them daily. And my phone number is also on the website. Chelsea, our administrative assistant's phone number is on the website. You can reach out to any of us and we'd be glad to get you some help, get everything taken care of. So that's all that I think I have for today, and just wish you all a great summer. Make sure you get out and have a little relaxation time after all of your end of the year craziness, and just encourage all of your kids to keep reading this summer and to just keep reading and growing. I hope you guys have a great summer. Thank you very much.